Welcome back. Now we're going to get into some of the fun stuff of the programming. We're going to do some basic customization. With the basic customization, what I'd like to do is go to our main panel, change a couple backgrounds, look at a couple images, adjust a couple macros, show you how to create your own macros, show you how to create your own buttons. To do that, we're going to look at our panels window, and we're going to double click on main, and we're going to look at our pages. If you're building a phone, you'll see your portrait pages. If you're building a tablet, you'll see your landscape pages. What we're trying to do is see the interface on our main window, which we can now see front and center. And the first thing we notice, we see our buttons, our links, and we can drag and drop these anywhere on the screen that we want using our mouse. So if you want this laid out just a little bit differently, you can do so. If you want to stack these, you can. You can also use the arrow keys on your keyboard to move these one row by one column at a time. And if you look at our labels, we can change what these labels say. So if you don't want it to say welcome to your remote, we can change it to say something else. In our properties window, the first field that we see is the name. I'm going to double click on it, actually triple click, so I highlight the entire text. I'm going to type in my new text. We'll type in on controls training. We'll hit return, and we see our new label front and center on our screen. Now we can also adjust the row. So if I want to move this to the first row, I can change the column. Right now the width of the label is 51. That's as wide as the actual interface. So I can't change the column because it's going to tell me that it's going to move it off the screen. Change the height. I can change the style of font. So if we want to use a different type of font, we can do so. We can change the size of the font, make it bigger so we can see it. Make it bold, change the color. We can change the text alignment, put it on the left side of the screen, put it on the right, put it on the left. We can do repeat on hold, which is a repetitive command. So it's a single command that we want to continuously repeat. Your volume commands, we've seen it done with cursor commands, different types of commands that you wanted just a consistent, smooth repeat. You can do that with the repeat on hold. Toggle commands, that means that you're going to put two commands on one button, which we'll show you how to do. Mute on, mute off, for example. First time I press it, the mute's turned on. Second time I press it, we turn the mute off. Push release, this gets used most often for the relays for your contact closures. So if I push it, let's say I open the relay while I'm pushing it. So I push and hold it, it continues to open the relay. And then when I take my finger off on the release, we close the contact. Different buttons can be used. You could do this with your mute commands as well, however you'd like to design it. If you have something on the screen that you don't want, right click, we can delete. We can also do multi-select, so I can take my mouse, select multiple elements at a time. We can move them about the screen. If you want to add text to a button, we can do so as well. So I'm going to click on my blank button. And inside the properties window, we see a text field. Inside this text field, I'm going to say web. Hit return. Now I have the same text formatting that I did before. Now you'll notice that we have some different options here. We have this panel name and page name for this button. This is what we actually call a link, and this is how we define our link. So it's going to take us to a certain panel. It's going to show us all the panels from our panels window, and it's going to tell us the page name within that panel. On the bottom of our screen, we see these individual device powers, and we can hardly make out this little icon here. Now the reason why, if I take my mouse and hover over it, it shows me that there's no commands. Now if you have an image that appears grayed out, doesn't have the full color that the rest of the buttons do on the screen, that just means that there's no command attached, so we can attach our own command. For these individual device powers, this is for your devices that have power toggles, or if you want to just provide a discrete power, just a way you can turn a single unit on or off. Find the device that you want to incorporate a single button for from our Devices tab. And we'll do our Panasonic Blu-ray. Open up that database code, and I'm looking for that power toggle option. And I simply drag and drop. I see the blue ring around my button, and I let go. So I got a nice gray image, and the mouse shows me that there's a power toggle. I'm going to tweak my label to say this is for Blu-ray power. Change my font to match all the other fonts. If you want to do a multi-delete, we can do that as well. I'm going to move this individual device power logo just over a little bit here. Click on my mouse and highlight these 3 items. Hit delete on my keyboard and hit return. Move my power so I've got a nice clean screen and everything lines up. Now, the same way that we edited that single button, we saw that there's no commands. We can do the same thing with our individual macros, such as Blu-ray. Take the mouse and hover over it. We see that it turns on the receiver, turns on the TV, turns on the Panasonic Blu-ray, then it turns on the receiver. Now, after a moment, that pop-up goes away, so I can actually double-click on this icon, and I can go into the macro view, so I can see the exact macro that is being sent, and I see my images in my image states. If you want to adjust this macro, say you're using a device such as a matrix switch, go back to my Devices tab. I'm going to browse and import a matrix switch. So we'll search for an Atlona. We'll import the 4x4 and we'll close that search window. So now for my device commands, I find my input output 1. That happens to be my Blu-ray player with that Samsung TV. I'm going to drag that in to where it says Blu-ray. We see the blue box. I let go. There's my new command with a delay before it. So I don't have to worry about going through and editing my delays. The delays by my default delay that I assigned get added every time I add a command. If you want to change your image states, you want to find a more custom image for that Blu-ray player, go to my Image tab, find those activities, and you'll notice that we have pressed, default, and selected. We have 3 different image states. Your pressed is your middle state, which actually appears when you press the button. So I'm going to go through here and we'll find that PS3. So let's say you're controlling a game system, you want to customize this just a little bit. Go over to my pressed field, see it turn blue and let go. And now I've changed my press state. We'll do the same thing for our default. Find that PS3 logo. Now again, you don't need to do this for our system. This is just to show you how you could actually change the image states. We'll do the same thing with selected. So now we changed 3 image states. We adjusted our macro. I can close out of this screen. There's my new graphic. If you'd like to change anything else on the screen, you can do it without the necessity of going to that macro view. So you could do it right from here. So if I want to do these transparent graphics, for instance, I'm going to go back to that Blu-ray logo so we can drag in our default state right to our image. We'll minimize this. Find our transparent pressed. Now a keyboard shortcut, if I hold down P on the keyboard while I drag this over, you'll notice that the default does not change. And if I hold down S for selected while I drag in my new selected state, the default will appear the same. Now if I don't hold down S and I just drag this over, we now see this blue ring around it. That's because I changed the default state with my selected state image. No worries, I can undo that last previous step by using Command Z for a Mac, Control Z for a PC, and go back to my selected state, hold down S, bring it over. Now if you realize that you need to adjust the macro as well, so let's say for the Apple TV, I'm going to do input 2, output 1, drag that over to the Apple TV. I can double click on the Apple TV and see my new command with a delay as well. And to verify the images that we changed, I can see my new graphics inside my image states. Now off to the right where we see this drop here, this is for multi-state images. So if you're using those buttons where you press it the first time it's on, press it the second time it's off, you can add in your own image states. So if I look at my activities, the first time I press it shows Blu-ray. So the second time I could have my selected state be TV. Third time web. You can create as many different image states as you would like. If you want to change a background, you can do so as well. So we browse for those backgrounds, for those landscape. We can find those at the bottom of our Images tab. Now I simply can't drag and drop this into my new area. You'll see the blue ring around iTunes. Now we have our new image state. I'm going to undo that because that's not what I'm trying to do when I want to change a background. Instead, I'm going to go to the Show All Layers and change this to my background layer. Now it removes all the buttons from the screen. I can find my new background, drag and drop. I can also look at the backgrounds on the left side of my screen. We can see we have this plain background. I can reorder these using these green arrows and put this to the top. If I want to delete it, I can right click and delete. If I want to get rid of the previous background as well, I'm going to delete that as well. So now I've got the single background. Go back to my all layers. There's my new background. On top is my new buttons. Change my text color here so I can see it. And now we have a brand new interface. Now one other thing that we'd like to talk about is using variables. A couple of basic examples for variables: changing text, changing an image. What we'll do in this scenario is we're going to change the color of our text of our On Controls Training label. And I can do that creating a new button. And to create a new button, I'm going to go to my images, just find some kind of blank button under miscellaneous. So I'll find my miscellaneous mesh. And we'll bring this in anywhere on our screen. I'm going to double click on this, and we see that we have our button small in our macro view. I can right click, and I can add a set variable. Now the set variable is going to do nothing until I assign a variable. Now where you want to assign the variable is on the piece that you're changing. So let me close this and go back to my text, my label, and inside the properties window I'm going to change the color. So I find the cog icon, click on it, and it allows me to type in a variable value. I'm going to type in text color and hit return. Now from that drop down list that we have for our options, that's what we're going to set our value to. Go back to the button that we created, go back to our set variable within our macro view, and inside the properties window I'm going to start to type my variable. I see the text color. I'm going to scroll down and select it and hit return. And inside the variable value, I'm going to type in the name of the new color. So I'm going to type in red and hit return. So now our set variable is going to change our text color to red. So I can close this out. And when I sync this and I tap on this button, this color of this label is going to change from blue to red. You can do the same thing with changing backgrounds. So let's say I want to also change the background image. Now with the background image, I'm going to click on the background from the panels, and I'm going to look at the properties field of this background. Now I see an image ID field, see the icon. I'm going to type in background image and hit return. Now in the same button that I created before, I'm going to add a second variable. So I can right click once again, add in my set variable, go to my variable name, type in background. I see background image, I'll hit return. Now for variable value, you actually want to drag in your new image. So I'm going to go to my images folder, go back down to that background, find a new background, and I'm going to drag that into my macro view. We see the blue ring around it, let go. Now we have a new image ID with the actual name of the image. So this button that we just created is going to do two things. It's going to change the color of my text, and it's going to change the background that we see. For the hands-on exercise, we'd like you to change the background, add a variable. You can change the label. You can change what the label says. Just create some variable to change the background, change the label, whatever you feel comfortable with.